Yo, what it do, everybody? Your favorite anti-hero, back with another video. For those who don't know me, I am the Pepperoni, and here, we don't like to throw shade, but we do love sprinkling pepper. Because we care. Today I'm going to be rocking the red shirt, so it's going to be a book-related kind of video. It's going to be a book review, and we're going to be doing a review on the book Captor, Captive by L.J. Kane. Right across the top, it actually says the intense psychological suspense thriller. Just judging from the cover and from that header, if that's the kind of books that you're interested in, then you might like this book. In this book, you're going to get to follow the story of a character named Ellie. Ellie is a young woman. She recently just turned 18, and she's trying to discover herself. But you don't really get to see that in this book, because she gets a bad stroke of luck right off the bat. Literally in the first sentence, she gets kidnapped by an evil rapist guy. Sucks to be her. Now, this is a relatively short book. It's actually only 239 pages, so it is a fast read. Once you get into it, you're just going to fly right through it, so you won't be reading it very long. So that's a good thing. The villain, or the antagonist, is a character named John Braden, and, well, you don't really have to remember the John part. He's just referred to as Braden. In this book, you don't have the disappearing antagonist issue. In some books, the antagonist appears at the beginning of the story and then just disappears for the whole story until the very end, in the big climactic showdown. That's not a issue in this book. You see the enemy or the antagonist prevalent in the beginning, but as you get into the story, the antagonist continues to reappear. You get to see the antagonist trying to do stuff, trying to achieve his goals. So that's good. You don't get a whole lot of real backstory into your antagonist in this book, but we do get one little bit of backstory for Braden on page 172. The antagonist Braden is speaking, and he says, quote, my bitch escaped before she gave birth, but you won't. So here we get to see the antagonist. He had a really important bitch in his life, and she apparently escaped before giving birth to his child. And so he's feeling pretty sad at this point. He's feeling pretty down. And he's probably wanting to take out his frustrations on somebody else. In this case, the main character, Ellie. He's pretty depressed. And that causes him to turn to a life of doing drugs. Because the villain in this book, Braden, becomes an unstoppable crackhead. He smokes a lot of crack, and he's pretty much invincible. You see that throughout the story. There's actually one point in the story. See, I've read this book twice, and the first time I read it, there was a part where I was like, that don't make sense. No human being would naturally be able to endure that kind of pain. He must be on some kind of drug, or like if she would have said he was on a drug, that would make sense. Well, I reread it, and that's the case. He's a crackhead. So, yeah, he's an unstoppable crackhead, and he's kind of had a psychological break. And so he's decided, I know what I'll do. I'll just rape women and cause pain. He's taking out his anger on this innocent victim, who is the main character, Ellie. Now, luckily for Ellie, the antagonist, Braden, he has a helper in the beginning of the story. The helper of the antagonist is a character named Darren Broderick. But you don't have to remember the Broderick part. That literally only appears, I think, on the back of the book. His name is just Darren in the story. So he's referred to by his first name. Darren, he he's a really swell guy. He helps kidnap the main character Ellie, and then he watches Ellie get kidnapped, held in Braden's basement, and then Braden likes to film when he rapes. So Darren gets to watch the raping for like 2 or 3 days, and in that time period, Darren, he's like, you know what? This seems kind of wrong. I should be the one who kidnaps her. So he kidnaps the kidnap victim. He takes Ellie, and then Darren becomes the kidnapper. And he's like, I'm gonna up the ante. I'm gonna hold her for a ransom. Then it turns into an interesting story of will they, won't they? An interesting fact about Ellie, she thinks Braden is a really evil, bad guy. And as you read on, you realize that what makes him so bad is not the fact that he kidnapped her and that he raped her. You soon realize the bad thing is actually that he stinks and he's apparently really ugly. Because when Darren kidnaps her and keeps making sexual advances to her, he manages to arouse her interest. And as you read on, you realize that Darren is actually very muscular and has a very charming Aussie accent. As the story goes on, it turns into you're basically an on-the-run kind of story, kind of cat and mouse, hide-and-go-seek thing, where basically the new kidnapper, which is Darren, is dragging along Ellie in handcuffs, and they're trying to outrun the previous kidnapper, Braden. As they're running away, this really cute kind of relationship builds between Ellie and Darren, where Ellie calls him a bastard every other page, and then Darren calls her a fucking bitch a lot. And so they really build a really cute chemistry. You can tell that, they could potentially hook up. And she basically has to resist his sexual charm for the book. So yeah, that's a thing. Also in this story, I'll tell you, there's actually it's not a helicopter scene, but there is a scene with a helicopter. And see, the interesting thing about this helicopter is it actually is saving somebody. But I don't want to spoil anything in this video, so I'm not going to tell you who the helicopter saves. I'm going to leave that up to the author, L.J. Kane. I think that's more her responsibility. I'm just going to mention it to you. In addition, you also get to learn some really important facts about the main character, Ellie. You get to learn that she has just really pretty knickers. I'm not going to describe them to you. Again, I'm going to refer that to L.J. Kane. I don't want to spoil anything. I think that's more her responsibility. She should be describing those knickers for you. But they are very pretty. And of course, you get to learn underneath those pretty little knickers that our main character, Ellie, is sporting a smooth Brazilian wax job. Because, hey, who likes fur burgers anyway? That's really important to the story. Now, in this story, you also get to see, because it is a intense psychological suspense thriller, and so obviously there should be some psychological element to it, and there is. You get to see what the psychological effects are on a young woman when she's exposed to really dangerous situations, and also muscular chests and bulges in a man's pants, and clenched jaws on the face of a kidnapper. Also, an interesting element to the story is as you read it, it takes place in the UK, so you get to see the wild, sporadic weather of the UK, which is really interesting. And you also get to see the interesting vocabulary of British English speaking folk. Um, if you're an American, it's going to be a little tricky trying to get through some of the words, but I think that's all part of the experience. You get to really see that world for what it is, and that involves being immersed in the vocabulary of the area. So that's cool. Now this is an arcade book, so if you're someone who likes to collect tokens, this is a book that you're going to want to add to your collection. If you go online, you'll find that some people have problems with a particular scene in the book. There is a very romanticized sexual kind of scene, and it's some say it's out of place. I'll leave that up to the readers to decide. I think literature is a form of art, and so L.J. Kane, the author, is an artist, and so she's trying to express herself with this art form, and she's trying to really say a lot about herself and whatever story is on her heart that she's trying to tell the world. So I'm not going to speak negatively about it, but what I will say is it's not a scene that I think black people would really like, and at the same time I don't really think it's a scene that white people would like either. I think it's more of a scene that only gray people would like, and that's not specific. It doesn't matter what shade of gray you are. I think if you're a gray person, you're probably going to like it a lot. The story is a constantly moving kind of story. Obviously, the characters are on the run. You have the main character Ellie and her second kidnapper, Darren, always on the run from the first kidnapper, who is the bad kidnapper, whose name is Braden. And that's pretty much the bulk of the story. They're always just trying to run away from the former kidnapper because his way of doing it was bad. He was ugly and he stunk. So when he kidnaps and rapes, it's not so good. All in all, if you read the book called Snatch Girl and you liked that book, then you're probably really going to like this book. Pretty much, the author basically just copied that story and made it better and gave it a new name. This is basically Snatch Girl 2.0. So if you like that book, you'll probably like this book too.
Jokes, people. This is what you get.
All the books that I review on this channel are books that I saw advertised on Twitter. I will never review a, quote, mainline book. I like to support independent authors. Yeah, I seen this book advertised, and I thought, hey, this is too good to pass up. It specifically says, the intense psychological suspense thriller that will hook you from the very first line. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and read you the very first line of the book, and hopefully it will hook you. The book opens as such. The shapeless shadow lunges from the semi-darkness, pitching her to the floor with its solid weight on top of her, as Ellie pushed open her front door. And there you have it, folks. Hopefully that really pulled you in, that hooked you. And if it did, don't be afraid to go to Amazon.com right now, buy you a copy, read it. Obviously, you can get an ebook, but you can also get the physical copy. Read it, enjoy it. Be sure to leave feedback for the author, L.J. Kane, in the on the Amazon page. Leave her some reviews, and follow her on Twitter. Bye.